Since 2015, PopHealth Podcast has brought to you some of the best minds in healthcare, including leaders from government, not-for-profit, and investor-backed powerhouses, as they share successes, failures, and how our audience can move forward in today's constantly evolving healthcare world. Thank you for joining us for today's episode presented by 24 Hour Home Care.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of PopHealth Podcast. I'm Gavin Ward, host of PopHealth Podcast. Today's episode is close to my heart because we recap the last 10 years with special guest and executive producer Ryan Iwamoto. Some of you may know that name because he actually has been behind the scenes supporting the show for over 10 years. And actually, there were a couple episodes early on before we started doing video that he was also a co-host. In today's episode, Ryan shares about the origin of the podcast, some of the highlights from the past 10 years, and then he flips the switch on me and he starts lobbing questions my way. So it was fun to be on the other side for me and share about some of my favorite highlights over the last 10 years. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of PopHealth Podcast. Feel free to check out other episodes by visiting us on YouTube or listening us wherever you listen to your shows. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy today's episode. Ryan, thanks so much for joining the podcast. I think this is the first time after a decade you've actually been a guest.
That is correct. I am happy to be here, and it's pretty amazing. Over a decade of doing this and still going strong. And Gavin, you've been doing an awesome job as host here and spreading the good word of population health, healthcare, and all the great stuff that we do at 24 too.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. So folks, if you don't know, Ryan Iwamoto was actually I don't know if you'd call it like executive producer technically, but the reason the podcast could even exist was because of Ryan giving it the green light. For those of you that don't know, technically, if you look in the small print of the logo, 24 Hour Home Care backs the podcast, but we try not to promote 24 or anything like that, really make it educational. So Ryan, I know the answer, but I don't know if our audience does. When we first came up with the podcast idea, it was not my idea. It might have been one of your colleagues' ideas, but what were we trying to accomplish with the podcast?
Yeah, well, I think, we launched it before, I guess you could say, like, podcasts were a thing or cool.
Yeah.
We were definitely, some of the comments that we've received along the way is like we were doing it way ahead of the time of the popularity of podcasts. So that was a really cool initiative that we did. But really it sparked from 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a lot of focus on reducing hospital readmissions.
Yeah.
And I remember we would attend these conferences that spoke to people in healthcare about what are some organizations doing that is helping reduce hospital readmissions. And we would go to these conferences and it would be packed with individuals. And the speakers there were really thought leaders within the industry and from very well-known organizations across the country that would talk about these different initiatives. And it was really good information, good networking. And again, like I said, the audience was packed wall to wall, standing room only. Conferences get done, everyone be motivated, super enthusiastic about what's happening. And then we would have to wait another year for the next conference to come up. And then those conferences were always packed. So the thought of, it was sort of the like intersection between, okay, this is a really hot topic. It seems like people wanted to know more about what these organizations are doing. And people love talking about some of the initiatives. And around that time, I think it was where podcasts were starting to really take off.
Yep.
But not in the healthcare field. I don't think at the time there were very many healthcare podcasts. I think it was more of like entertainment or what's the one that was really popular that it was like a murder mystery one.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name, but
it might come to me. But like that just took off, and I remember I was listening to that. So it was like just getting hot, and I'm like, there maybe could be an opportunity to take what we're learning on the readmission side of things and bring these thought leaders, and not have to wait a year for them to hear what's happening. Can we do it on a more reoccurring cadence? And that really was the genesis of PopHealth Podcast, was to bring those guests onto the show so they can talk about what they're doing and not have to wait for a conference to do it.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing with the audience that story. I knew a little bit of that and most of that. I also appreciate you allowing me to kind of help name the podcast. I love alliteration. So we talked as a little small group, and I appreciate having some influence in the name of that. So thanks for letting that go. And that's allowed us really to have guests throughout all of healthcare, because for those of you that are listening, and Ryan, you probably know this, population health really can cover a lot of different topics that impact. I know there's actually a group of population health experts that could probably define that a lot differently and may not exactly call it that. But yeah, man, we've been going for about 10 years. I know you may not recall all the episodes. We're over 200 now, which is really cool. And I was curious if you remember, maybe during the early days or throughout, any of the guests that you remember or what stood out to you during the last 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the fond memories I have is just securing some of the guests to actually be on the show, and like getting some like pretty big thought leaders on the show at the time.
Yeah.
Because we were this small little podcast that, I mean, we were, going to people's offices with sort of this makeshift microphones and recording studio.
Yeah.
So it was like pretty low budget, but some of the responses and the invitations were well received. And, I remember one of the guests that we got was Dr. David Feinberg, who was the former CEO of UCLA Health, went to Geisinger, and then also went to like lead Google's health initiative, which was really cool. And then that also really resonated with me, because one of the books that were written about him at UCLA, which was called The Prescription of Health, was I think that's the title. It could be something else, but was written about like all the things that he did at UCLA to really turn it around and be a powerhouse in the healthcare space. So
yeah,
that was really cool to see, like just almost like kind of seeing someone in the industry, like someone that you looked up to as almost a celebrity on our little rinky-dink PopHealth show.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I don't know if you might have known this, but at the time, Zach Morgan and myself were the hosts, and we went to his hotel conference room at about 5 a.m. It was in like LA, Beverly Hills area, because he was leading Geisinger at the time, but was in LA for, I think, a UCLA acknowledgement or recognition type event. So in order for us to get him, he's like, yeah, I can do it, but it's got to be like 6 a.m. before my first few meetings. So he had actually worked out in the morning and had came, lucky he wasn't all sweaty or anything. He had dried off, but he came in and recorded the show. At the time, it was just audio. So he was in workout clothes, and you're bringing back some cool memories, man. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would say the other one that really stood out was Dr. Sachin Jain.
Yeah.
He was the CEO at CareMore at the time, and I think it was right before he made the move over to Scan Health Plan.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, he's just a wealth of knowledge. I think if anyone follows him on LinkedIn, just a big thought leader, not just in healthcare, but just in leadership. So it's really cool to be able to secure him and have him on as a guest. And I don't think he truly knew who we were as we were talking to him, but hey, I think it also shows like sometimes you just got to ask. And people often want to share some of the things that they're doing. And I think we allowed for a lot of people to be able to do that on a platform. It may have been really small at the time, but people didn't know that. But we saw it grow and be more of a staple within the sort of healthcare podcast scene. So it was really cool. I mean, big kudos to you, Gavin, for securing him, and it's definitely a memorable guest for PopHealth podcast. And then I would say some of the other ones is more of like some of the local guests that we've had. Bob King, who has been a labor law attorney, always a very engaging and, to me, very entertaining.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conviction, wealth of knowledge. Labor law obviously is not always the most, you don't think about it being entertaining, but some of the things that he shared and some of the stories he shared, just always like talking to that guy. So I know he's been a reoccurring guest on PopHealth podcast. Actually, a question for you, Gav.
Yeah.
Who has been on the show the most?
Yeah. Oh, man. For my guest perspective, I would say probably one of two. Actually, I would say it's probably Charles, who's the president and CEO of the California Association of Health Plans, would be up there. I think he does an annual episode for us, but we didn't reach out to him until the California Advancing and Innovating Medical Initiative really started. So I'd say he's been on maybe 3 or 4 times. He does an annual update for us. And then American Physician Group's former CEO, Don Crane, not sure if you remember that name at all. I don't know if you've ever met him, but you might know the name. So he leads he led a national organization that many folks listening in might either be a part of already. So a lot of the medical groups like Kaiser, for example, Providence, pretty much if you're a part of a medical group, you're either a part of America's Physician Groups or know about it. So he's been on like 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been great for me to be able to like interact with these guys has really been an honor and a blessing. And I've developed, industry friendships through the podcast and been doing it 10 years. Ryan, I think you know this. I interned for American Broadcasting Company when I was in college. I decided not to pursue it after. I'll just leave it at that. It wasn't quite what I expected. And so I always wanted to like.
You have a good voice, Gav.
Sometimes. I don't know about that, but thank you. So it's been cool. It's been fun. And I appreciate the platform that you've given me and given the show. Because
I was just going to say, I think one of the things that sort of stood out for me with Pop Health Podcasts, and I would say probably more in the earlier years, is that I think on the healthcare side of things, there weren't too many platforms where people can talk about themselves or share what they're doing or some of the great things that their organization is doing. Like LinkedIn was around, but people didn't really post the way they do you see today. So I felt like Pop Health Podcast really provided sort of this like platform or channel or whatever you want to call it for them to really talk about themselves. And at the time in healthcare, there really wasn't much or many opportunities to do that. Of course, now there's, thousands of podcasts on healthcare now, but at the time when we launched it, there really wasn't that, that didn't really exist and people weren't really doing it on LinkedIn. So I feel like it was a great time to get leaders to talk about some of the leadership things that now you probably see a lot more on LinkedIn or even on Instagram too. I think you see more people talking about those things.
Yeah, definitely. That's, I really appreciate you asking, man. This has been fun. For folks that don't know, the show doesn't make money, right? Ryan, we've talked about this behind the scenes about should we have sponsors? We've been approached. We're not a gigantic, show that generates, tens of thousands of views per episode or anything like that. But there have been approaches to generate a little bit of income and we've chosen not to. If you guys didn't know that, the folks that are listening or watching, this show does not generate income or money. And so it takes leaders like Ryan to really believe in the message and the opportunity to bring people together and learn about what's going on, not just in California, which is a big focus of our show the last few years, but just even beyond nationally as well. So thank you, Ryan, for being a executive producer of the show. I know you've had some summer vacations. I know you were in Alaska on a cruise with your family recently. So I do see the Hawaiian picture as well, which looks like a lot of fun. We're at the end of summer. You've been to Hawaii, I'm assuming?
I have.
Yeah.
3 times. Yeah.
Nice. But I appreciate you joining the show today and being a guest after 10 years. I finally got you to come on and just share a little bit about the background of the show. So thanks again, Ryan.
I got a question though. I'm not done.
Okay.
What has been the most embarrassing moment for you?
That's a good one. A couple come to mind. There's been multiple guests who I've had to ask to either come back in person or virtually when we started doing virtual after COVID to re-record because I forgot to hit the record button. Oof. Or before we knew what the cloud was, or I didn't save it in a shared drive, I accidentally deleted an episode before. I've had episodes blow up into many different pieces somehow, like digital pieces, and IT had to spend many, many hours. I think it was an outsourced IT, so the company probably had to pay a pretty penny to put that episode back together. And then I had to fork out many hundreds of dollars myself and time for one episode because it was in Arizona. I flew to Arizona and forgot the equipment in my car.
Oh, I remember that.
I had a colleague with me who I was training and showing the ropes of my day job at 24 Hour Home Care. I landed in Arizona in the evening and I realized I didn't have the equipment. I was able to catch a flight back that got me back into Burbank Airport by 9:30 p.m. And I had to be at 6 a.m. the next morning. I had to be at a conference center to start recording. So I was in Burbank at 9:30, grabbed my car, drove to LAX. So I used Southwest Point, a bunch of points, as you can imagine, last minute. on one flight and about, I think, $500 of my own money to get a one-way flight back from LAX with the equipment. Didn't get to bed till about 2 a.m., up by 5 a.m., recorded.
That's
and
awesome.
It was embarrassing, but also it made me look tough to my colleague. And it actually created a stronger bond because it's that spirit of extreme ownership. Our friend and colleague, Tom, you know who I'm talking about, Ryan, from Tom Sowers. He's a big believer in extreme ownership, and our organization, our day job has talked about extreme ownership, and that's the spirit I had. Could I do that every time? No. But yeah, so that was.
We got the equipment back, right?
What's that?
We got the equipment back?
We did. Yeah, we put together the conference episode. Everything was good.
You didn't expense any of that extra cost to the company?
Did nothing because that's yeah. There's no way. There's no way I was expensing that on my mistake. So yeah, so that was probably the most embarrassing, but it's fun looking back. At the time, I hated it. I also saw a professional wrestler on the flight from LAX back to Arizona. A guy who goes by the name of Dolph Ziggler was his character name at the time. He was in first class on that late night flight to Arizona. So that was a cool memory. But yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun. And to go 10 years.
Yeah. Another question? What was the most streamed or downloaded episode so far?
Yeah, I would say unexpected, but Medi-Cal eligibility. Well, let me take a step back. I don't. We don't do this show for the number of downloads, right? Or for the number of streams. Obviously, we would love to have a big audience, but we're not making money, right? That's not the intent of the show. Creating awareness, sure. So I would say Lisa Ramsey, who is a Medi-Cal expert here in California and runs a consulting firm that helps people qualify for Medi-Cal. She did an episode on Medi-Cal eligibility. And you're probably familiar this year and in the recent years past, there's been some changes to that. Some people view it as positive, some negative, depending on the year. They might flip-flop their views. So that's been a hot topic. And it surprised me because Lisa is well known in like certain parts. But the fact that she can talk on a topic that really impacts tons of people in California. So for those that don't know, there's, I believe the latest numbers right currently as we're recording, it's like 15 million-ish folks in California who are on Medi-Cal. And so a lot of folks are very interested, organizations that serve the Medi-Cal population. So I might be spilling our secret sauce on what episodes are the best. But yeah, Medi-Cal eligibility is a hot topic. So
one last one here.
Sure.
What is the one guest that got away that you would wish that could have been a guest on our show?
Oh, man.
Or maybe not got away, but just you would want to have on your show that you weren't able to get yet.
This may not be that well. So we did have an episode. I don't know if I should name the name. We recorded an episode with a gentleman at a Orange County prestigious hospital in Orange County, California. And he may not have gone through the right channels before recording with us. So when we released the episode, he begged us to take it off. And I could be
anything controversial, or he just didn't get the approval.
Performance improvement was the category. So, some people may be really excited about performance improvement and hearing about it. I don't know if that would have been our most downloaded episode. I don't think it would have been. Yeah. But yeah, he called, and I'm not going to name the hospital since professionally I still interact with that organization, and maybe we might interact with this individual. But I would say.
But was it like, did he say anything there that like violated something, or was it just he didn't probably get it approved?
Didn't get permission. So if you guys did, the listeners may not know this, or the audience, sometimes we have to go through PR channels, communication departments, and get approval. You guys know we've had state leaders on the show, and so we have to go through, media teams and communication teams. And so I don't always do that. I go to the guest directly sometimes, and then they tell me if I have to or not. So this person didn't say anything, and later I think got their hand slapped. The biggest guest we went after was President Barack Obama.
Remember that?
We did reach out to his team through a website inquiry page. Like they wouldn't even give the team's contact information. But we did go through, I think like the minimum expense would have been many hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I remember talking to you, like you said, and we were thinking, could we put on an event where we wouldn't be out, many hundreds of thousands of dollars? We can actually recoup some of the costs.
You did get a response.
No response.
Oh, no response. It was like an update. How did you find out about the cost?
Forgive me for not recalling. I believe it might have been
automated.
I believe it might have been on the website. This was when he was, I think he was either active president or immediately after his presidency. I can't recall the timing, but that was our biggest fish. And unfortunately, we got the ghosting, which I'm sure people out there who have tried stuff like that might be used to. And it was a bummer.
So, you got to shoot for the moon.
Yeah. So I would say the biggest yay, we got this guest was episode 3. David Sion, who was the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services regional administrator for California and a couple other areas. I think they called it Region 9 is what they called it.
Did you do it at his home?
We did. So we were a mom and pop podcast 3 episodes in. The first 2 episodes were Orange County organizations, Hoag Hospital leadership for different department, and then community senior serve leadership at the time. They're now known as Meals and Wheels Orange County. Those were our first 2 episodes. So we looked like maybe we're an Orange County based podcast, but David oversaw multiple states, I think Puerto Rico included. And I met him at a conference, shook his hand, sent him an email, and he invited us to his home in Northern California. Myself and our colleague Joe Zimmer went up to his house in Northern California with our big equipment, and he made time on vacation while he was on vacation to speak to us. So cool. And he even had his own mic, Ryan. Not sure if I told you this, but he's a musician. So he does little music gigs on the side with a band that he was in, and he had his own mic for the podcast. So
that's great. And that's kind of ahead of the time too. Now everyone I feel has mics for podcasts, but back then, 10 years ago, you didn't really see that. But yeah, if he's a musician, of course. Right?
Yeah. So yeah, man, Ryan, really appreciate you recapping and asking me some questions. Kind of cool to be on the other side a little bit. So really appreciate it. And thanks for all the support over the years.
Yeah, awesome job. This is cheers to 10 years and maybe 10 years more.
Let's hope so. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of PopHealth Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and if you have and want to check out other episodes, visit us at pophealthpodcast.com, iTunes or Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, and now YouTube as well. Take care.